Everyone says how horrible it will be to renovate or build your house. We're here to say it doesn't have to be that way. Join 3 seasoned architects as they interview homeowners who recently completed a large project and ask them one simple question. What do you know now that you wish you knew before you started? Welcome to Home, the Second Story podcast.
Hi, and welcome to a snack size episode of Home, the Second Story. I'm Marilyn Modinger of Runcible Studios from Boston, Massachusetts and Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and I'm joined today by
Sheri Scott from Springhouse Architects in Cincinnati, Ohio.
And I'm Taylor Davis from TPD Architect in Birmingham, Alabama.
All right, well, time to dive in. Today we are talking about entries. So the entry to the house, I think we're kind of focused on front entries. We could talk about back entries. We can talk about the exterior of the entry. We can talk about the front foyer, the back foyer, hallways,
Mudroom.
Yeah, there's a lot here. We've talked about mudrooms a little bit in the past.
Yeah.
We thought this would be a fun topic, partially because this cover is very different we have different sort of perspectives on this. So as I'm often doing renovations, especially in tight urban conditions in Boston, that's a really different, I don't have a whole lot of control. I don't even have a front yard a lot of times. I'm just coming straight from the street into the house. So how we handle entries is pretty different, maybe than Sheri, especially, who often is working on multi-acre.
Yeah, ground up stuff. Even if it's a smaller site, we still have. So I would say from my perspective, we start with the car because that's how everyone comes to their house. And so we do take time to consider, what are you looking at when you're driving up, whether it's a short driveway. For instance, if you're in a neighborhood, it's a short driveway. We try to go past the house and then turn into the driveway. And I tell people, you're spending so much money on this house. Don't you want to look at it every day?
Drive by it. That's
exactly.
Great.
Drive by it every day. When we have more space, we try to do something on access with like the front door. You drive up and then swing around into like a side load garage or something. And then after the car, the homeowner almost always is going to drive up, park in the garage, and then come into their home. So their front door is the mudroom or garage door. But then we still have to account for guests and visitors, which, everyone really is still focused on front doors. And I think that will be forever because that is the iconic image, right? Even if nobody uses their front door. I shouldn't say nobody uses the front door. It's used less often by the homeowner. So, but then we do account for guests and pedestrian, walking up to, and what that experience is, walking up to the front door and waiting in the rain or, greeting people on a porch So those are the site implications until we get to the entry.
I think one of the ones that came up during the pandemic and my kid worked for Shipt, so he was doing grocery delivery during the pandemic. So deliveries are a big part of thinking about people at your front door now. And whether or not somebody is like, if they're going to leave stuff on a not covered porch, or if they're going to leave stuff on a covered porch. And if you're only getting Amazon deliveries, or if you're getting grocery deliveries or Target deliveries or whatever that is. So I think the pandemic really shifted a lot of people's mindsets about what our front doors were really for. And like I said, I had a kid who was making those grocery deliveries, and he would have to sit in his car to make sure somebody would get the stuff off the front porch so it didn't get rained or snowed or whatever those things were for. So I feel it very keenly, the delivery system.
Well, there's also delivery security, which is a big deal. So we're often designing, whether it's boxes or like special ways that packages can be kind of hidden or secured when they're delivered during the day and people aren't home or whatever the case may be. So that's a big deal as well. Obviously, for us working in a more urban condition, we usually do not have garages. I often have clients who don't even have cars. So, or their cars are stored offsite or somewhere else. And so most of those folks are using their front door as their front door. And the challenge that comes there is because at first when you hear about like, okay, well, the homeowners are using the garage door to enter, and that's kind of a bummer because they're not coming in their front door. But the advantage to that is that they're coming into a mudroom. So the sports
Right,
equipment,
right.
the groceries, like the mess is like
Shoes.
handled there before you sort of enter the house. What we find in a lot of our renovations is when you're coming in the front door and that's the main entry for everybody, then where are the kid backpacks and the sports equipment and the snow boots? Because it's New England. Like, where do those go that aren't also the front door where your guests are coming in? So we are often trying to figure out a back door that's not actually a back door, that we've started to call it a family entry. So that accommodates that. And we often don't have a lot of space or room to figure that out. But it's a really fun design problem to figure out how to keep the specialness of coming to someone's front door, and you don't walk in and you're immediately like surrounded by piles of homework and like soccer cleats. So, but I also think that the coming into the house and coming into that space, whatever it is, whether it's the mudroom or whether it's a more formal space, it's important to have a moment of pause before you go into the rest of the house.
I think lots of times we get calls for renovations where that's the thing that frustrates people the most about their existing house, especially like mid-centuries. Like, it doesn't have to be like a mid-century modern, but even like a rancher or like a cape, where that front door just opens into the living room, or you're like smack dab onto a stair and everybody's like it's kind of, it's a little much, and there's no place for pause. There's no place for reflection. And so that recreate, even if it's just cordoning off like a screen wall or something to feel like that's actually a place as opposed to just a door.
Yeah.
I tell my clients, we're starting from scratch, but sometimes we're tight on square footage because we want to keep people want small homes more and more often. But I'd ask them to think about, because this is what I think about, on a Saturday afternoon when you have nothing to do and you're laying on the couch, how are you going to feel if somebody comes to your door, right? Do you want them, like, especially if you're doing a lot of glass, which sometimes we do, like, do you want them to see you get up off the couch and come over? Like, we want to have some privacy here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
In a moment, like, you kind of, this sounds terrible. Sometimes you might want to hide. Like, you might not want to you might not want to go get who's at the door.
Lots of times I don't answer my door. I
don't necessarily want to answer the door for somebody who's selling encyclopedias.
Uninvited.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, let's talk about the actual physical door itself, because I think this plays into it. So I know a lot of folks kind of start off, at least my clients often will start off by saying, I want a lot of glass. Like, I want light coming in and all this kind of stuff. But then the privacy question immediately comes up. So how do you kind of balance that? So we've done doors that have like strips of glass, like a sort of mid-century modern type thing, that are frosted. So it's letting the light in, but not letting you see out. But also, it is important to have a way to see out your door for security reasons. So that's where side lights come in, so you can kind of see out. I've also had requests from clients with dogs that the side lights are great for the dog to sit at and look out the window and watch what's going on.
Yeah,
but then some people say they don't want their dog doing that because it stresses their dog out.
They see
so
everything.
We got to find out which dog it is.
Case by case.
We did a really pretty renovation with some clients who, it was actually their idea. They had some existing shutters on the inside of their house. So when we added steel and glass front doors, double doors, and they were concerned about the privacy, we installed the shutters on the back side of the door, since they don't use the front door all the time. And it was operable you could make it sort of into a Dutch door situation where you could close the lower part. And they were beautiful, and they were original to the house. And it was such an interesting solution to that problem that I would have never thought of, that really sort of added a whole level of customization to the house. And I loved it. I thought it was so lovely.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's an important reminder that we can look at historic and vernacular architecture for inspiration, not because we're trying to make something look old or look traditional, but because people have been solving these problems for millennia.
Right.
People have been solving the problem of how do you get in and out of your private living space since, we were living in caves and like stretched something across the cave opening to keep animals out, right? So
Yeah.
I think solving that problem and seeing how different people do it through history and in different cultures is really cool, because front door is very symbolic
Right.
for
Yeah.
everybody. In every culture, there's different like colors you might paint your door, different ways you might do certain things, or different ways you approach a door.
All right, materials for doors. I want to hear what y'all are doing.
Can I tell you about one door that we're designing in my
Yes.
office right now? Because I'm so excited.
Let's hear it.
We actually, we have a team of 7, and we brought everybody together around the table this week to do a collaborative design on this door, because we're all so excited. So this door, it's a big house, and this front door is literally a double door, 10 feet wide by 14 feet tall.
Oh my
It's gonna be a
Wow.
pivot door. So each leaf is 5 feet by 14 feet. Yeah, structurally, it has to be a pivot so that we can do it. And I even sat down with the client and said, in 10 years, your wife probably is not going to be able to open this door. I was very explicit, and I made him choose that he was still going to do this door. And she was involved too. I didn't mean to make it sound like that, but anyway, we're super excited about that door. So that door is obviously custom made, and it is going to be a wood product. It will probably have some kind of metal, sandwiched metal on the inside to keep the warping down. But other than these like super exciting custom creative doors, we usually do wood doors. People love a wood door. Like
We do wood all
I think
the time.
it feels like home
Yeah.
for a wood door.
We're often doing mahogany front doors. And even if the rest of the windows, we're certainly not doing mahogany windows. Mahogany doors are really cool. And they're actually really hard wearing. And I think people don't often think of that, or they think they have to get a plastic door, basically, which is what vinyl is, or a metal door or something like that. But especially if it's undercover,
Right.
we do them all the time. And we're in New England. It's cold. There's snow. There's all kinds of things. There's freeze thaw.
It's more the sun that damages it than the weather.
It's the sun. That's what I was just going to say. It's more about the sun.
We do lots of different doors. I would say right now around here, there's a huge trend for steel and glass doors that look like, old Hope section doors, like pretty big steel doors with lots of glass. They're gorgeous.
For front doors?
Yeah, for front doors.
Oh.
It's a big thing right now. And it's become a very notable, you can see it as kind of a design element all over our sort of area. And the nice thing is they are dimensionally stable, like maybe a thermal break, but they're not going to really warp if they're done right. And they let in a lot of light. Lots of people around here like French doors, like glass French doors, double French doors on the front of their house. So a lot of times we'll do those in clad to match the windows.
Yeah.
If we're doing clad windows, because that gives it a little stability and resistance to some of the elements. One of the things we've learned recently is some of the wood door manufacturers won't warranty a door if it doesn't have an overhang of a certain depth. And so if we're doing a kind of flat facade, we may have to really kind of figure out what the right door is. If they're not maintenance people, they may not want something that they have to reseal and stain constantly to maintain it. They may do better off with something else. And there are some manufacturers that are dealing with that and that are making wood doors that don't have those requirements for overhangs in order to warranty them. So you can find them. And then we do custom wood ones too. Those certainly come up all the time in whatever different species. So I think we kind of run the gamut around here, but I would say right now, like the kind of European looking steel and glass doors are all the rage. Like
that's fun.
It's what everybody wants.
One of the things that's top of mind for a lot of my clients is security. And I'm sure I'm not the only one with clients who are concerned with that. But, certain locking systems don't work with certain kinds of doors. So if you're using smart locks, like they won't work with a patio style door or with a 3-point lock. Like a lot of patio style doors have a 3-point lock. or a sliding door won't work with that. So suddenly you have someone who's like, I want all these doors. And then they're like, but it doesn't work with my smart home locking
Right.
system. And so there's like ways around that and that kind of thing. But I think that's another thing, is to kind of ask for an owner to ask themselves, like, what kind of security am I looking for? A double door is a lot less secure than a single door. It's just weaker and easier to kind of break in. So that's something to think about. But I also wanted to touch on something that you brought up, Taylor, about overhangs. I mean, I think overhangs, not only are they good to protect the door, but they're also really great. We kind of touched on this earlier about when you come up to the door and it's pouring rain and you're like fiddling with
Yes.
your keys and you've got
Yeah.
groceries and there's a kid and like,
Yep.
and in the houses I do, that someone's also got a cargo bike and they're like wrestling with all this stuff.
Yeah.
And they're in the pouring rain, like, just give an overhang, you know? So
Yeah. And there are a lot of ways to do that don't overwhelm the design. Yeah.
But I will also say, just because I've had this from experience, be careful when you're doing those and talk to your architect about any zoning. If you are up tight to the front yard line, your overhang might count as an encroachment.
might.
It's
Might
going
and
to
might not.
depend on the municipality. So
that's right.
Mhm.
be thinking about that and plan for
Zoning.
that.
Yeah. So the other thing I want to say about front doors for our listeners is, if the front door design is important to you, make sure that it becomes an allowance line item, that it doesn't just
Yes.
get lumped in with the window door, line item. You want a front door line item for that.
Yeah, and that's because they're more expensive. And if you want to do something custom, like a 14-foot pivot hinge,
Right.
like, that's not your off the shelf.
Yep. We knew this client and we knew they wanted something dramatic.
Yeah.
So we made sure that the contractor had a line item.
It's not just the door, it's the hardware and all the lock, like all the stuff is going to be pricier. So just, Sheri's right. Account for that.
I'm glad you brought up about zoning. I'm not trying to like circle us back to that, but just to say that it's just a reminder that even something that seems simple can be a big deal and can involve sort of bigger questions, whether it's the structure or whether it's getting into, if you're changing the door and you need to change where a light switch is and that leads to something else. We lighting on entries is really important, and the lighting that leads you to the entry, landscape lighting, the entry lighting above your head sort of to light the space, but also you want to have your mail accessible, like to get your mail. So I'm working in a lot of homes where the mailbox is on the house, not like at the street.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to have that well lit as well, so you can see what you're up to, your doorbell, all that stuff has to be composed, your address numbers, all that stuff is a part of your entry. And by the way, address numbers are another thing that seems really easy, but the fire department or the building department will have something to say. If you don't put them in the right spot, the fire department will say, move those.
Yeah.
Because the fire department has control over where you put your house numbers.
Right.
Yeah. Or you'll end up with double. Sometimes we do, the regulatory numbers out at the street and then do something different on the house.
One quick thing that I want to, and Sheri kind of brought it up too, and it's a question about how many people you're bringing into your entry. Like, I think thinking about that too, if you entertain a lot, you want to think about how people are coming into your house, how lots of people are going to get into your house, where they're going to park, how wide is the path going to be. Around here, when kids get their driver's licenses at 16, we got to make sure there's enough parking for however many bajillion cars are going to show up, and that people aren't having to walk from parked on the street, and there's a path that takes them there, so that you've got, all the teenagers coming in. So I think too, this circles back a little bit to what Sheri was saying, but your entry is going to get used by so many different people.
Yes.
And putting all of those kind of user groups, it is you, and it's most of the time you. But the time you're going to feel it a lot too is when it's not you and you haven't thought about that not you person yet.
It's also not just you today. So there's a lot of things, like I'll be working with clients and we do Pinterest boards or whatever, and if they have little kids, they'll pin all the stuff that's related to having little kids, like stroller or little kids stuff, or like a little low bench so the kids can change their boots. And I'm like, that's super cute and it looks really cute on Pinterest, but is that even going to be relevant in 3 years? Like, your kids are going to be older, and it's certainly not going to be relevant in 10 years. So how do you design these spaces, whether it's the entry, mudroom, that kind of thing, to grow with your family and to grow with your changing needs? We're working with clients who are in their houses for a long period of time, and they want those homes to work for them for a long period of time. So you've got to think about not just what it is today, but also how your family's going to grow and evolve.
You're going to go from having little boots to like 8 sets of car keys in the front of your house, and you got to figure out how to deal with that.
Yep. Thanks so much for joining us today on Home the Second Story for our quick snack. Questions for us, topics you'd like us to cover, or are you interested in being a guest? We'd love to have you. Reach out at admin@htsspodcast.com, and see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Home, the Second Story podcast. Feel free to share this episode with a friend. Contact information for all 3 of our architects are in our show notes. And don't miss future episodes. Follow or subscribe to our show for free in Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're listening right now.